The Alpha Empire, the so-called Alpha of the galaxy, was crumbling. Vrack stared at the holoscreen, disbelief written on his face. This cannot be. They should be weak. They should not exist. But the humans existed. They fought. They won. Across the galaxy, species that had long bowed to the Zirans began to see the truth. Humanity, small and seemingly fragile, had done the impossible. They had stood against the strongest empire and survived. They had taken the first steps toward erasing fear and rewriting history. Captain Marlowe watched the final wave of Ziran ships retreat into the void. Her crew cheered, tears of relief and pride in their eyes. Humanity had not just survived, they had triumphed against a power that had once seemed untouchable. In the POW, silence after the battle, the stars seemed to shine differently as if acknowledging what had just happened. The Alpha Empire had been challenged, humbled, and shown that no empire, no matter how mighty, could underestimate the heart of humanity. And in that moment, a quiet truth settled across the galaxy. The humans were no longer weaklings. They were unstoppable. They were resolute. They were the spark that would ignite a new future. The battle was over. Silence stretched across the void where once Ziran fleets had dominated. The Alpha Empire, proud and arrogant for millennia, had been humbled. Human. Ships drifted among the wreckage, engines humming quietly, survivors checking systems, tending to the injured, and offering comfort to those who had lost friends. Captain Elena Marlowe stood on the bridge of the SS Dauntless, her gaze fixed on the distant stars. She could still feel the echo of the battle, the roar of engines, the hum of lasers, the cries of both humans and Zirans alike. And yet, amidst all that destruction, she felt a quiet pride. Humanity had done what no one thought possible. They had stood against the mightiest empire in the galaxy, and survived. Across the fleet, crews celebrated quietly. There were cheers, yes, but also tears. The victory had come at a cost. Ships were damaged, lives lost, and friends gone forever. Yet in every face there was something new. Hope. The hope that humanity could endure, could rise, and could lead the galaxy into a future where courage and heart mattered more than fear and domination. In the remnants of Ziran space, the Alphas were in chaos. Fleets scattered, leaders missing, communications broken. For the first time, the galaxy saw the once mighty Alpha Empire as vulnerable, fearful, and fallible. Species that had lived in terror now whispered of humanity with awe and respect. They told stories of tiny ships darting between colossal warships, of courage that could not be measured, and of a species that refused to bow or die. Captain Marlowe spoke to her crew over the comms. "We have fought, and we have won. But this is not the end. We will rebuild, we will protect, and we will show the galaxy that humanity is not just strong in body or weapons, but in spirit. Every world, every life, every choice we make matters. This is our time, and we must rise to meet it." The humans began to aid the survivors. Planets devastated by Ziran occupation were given food, water, and protection. Communication networks were restored, and humans offered knowledge and technology to help species rebuild. They did not seek power or domination. They sought balance, freedom, and peace. And in doing so, they earned not just fear and respect but admiration. Meanwhile, back on the bridge, Vrack stared at the remains of his empire. His once proud fleet was shattered. His command worlds were in ruin. And yet, he could not deny what had happened. Humans, small and underestimated, had outwitted, outmaneuvered, and outlasted the Alpha Empire. For the first time in history, the Alphas faced a species that could not be destroyed, a species that refused to yield. Elsewhere, humans celebrated not just victory, but the resilience of their species. They remembered those who had fallen, honored their courage, and vowed to continue forward with the same determination. Every human knew that this was not just a triumph over the Alphas. It was a declaration to the entire galaxy. Humanity would never be underestimated again. Captain Marlowe looked out at the stars, her eyes shining with determination. "We did not survive because we were the strongest," she whispered, "but because we refused to give up. The galaxy will remember us, not as small creatures, but as humans, unbroken, unstoppable, and free." In the quiet that followed the war, a new era began. Humanity had carved its place among the stars, not through fear, not through domination, but through courage, intelligence, and heart. And for the first time, the galaxy understood something that would never be forgotten. Even the smallest spark can ignite the brightest fire. The humans had survived the impossible, and in doing so, they had begun a legacy that would echo across the stars for generations to come. The stars seemed different now. Where once the Alpha Empire had ruled with fear, the galaxy now whispered a new name: humanity. From the smallest colonies to the farthest outposts, humans were no longer the weak species, the forgotten ones. They were survivors, warriors, and pioneers. They had risen from obscurity to challenge the mightiest empire the galaxy had ever known, and they had won. Captain Elena Marlowe stood on the bridge of the SS Dauntless, looking out at the expanse of space. The debris of the Alpha fleets drifted like shattered dreams, a reminder of the empire that once thought itself untouchable. Her crew moved quietly, repairing ships, tending to the wounded, and sharing stories of courage and sacrifice. Every face carried the memory of what they had endured, and the knowledge of what they had achieved. "This is only the beginning," Marlowe said softly, her voice carrying across the comms. "We survived the impossible. We fought the strongest, and we won. But our true challenge now is to protect, to lead, and to show the galaxy what humanity truly means." Across the stars, former subjects of the Zirans began to look to humans with hope instead of fear. Planets once under strict Alpha rule now sought guidance, not domination. Humanity shared knowledge, offered aid, and rebuilt worlds torn by war. They did not seek power or conquest. They sought freedom, justice, and a chance for every species to grow without fear of annihilation. Even the remnants of the Alpha Empire watched in silence. Supreme Commander Vrax had retreated to the edge of known space, his pride shattered, his fleet in ruins. He could not understand it. How could a species so young, so fragile, defeat the strongest civilization in the galaxy? Yet the evidence was undeniable. Humans were not just survivors, they were Alpha in spirit. They had fought with courage, intelligence, and heart, and they had won where others had failed. Stories of heroism spread quickly among humans. Fighter pilots who had dodged impossible attacks, engineers who had saved entire fleets with a single invention, soldiers who had faced overwhelming odds without flinching. Each became a legend. The galaxy learned that strength was not measured only in weapons or numbers, but in determination, creativity, and the refusal to surrender. Marlowe's eyes swept over her fleet. Every ship, every crew member, every life had contributed to this moment. They had erased fear from the galaxy, not through terror, but through courage. And in that moment, she understood a truth that would define humanity for generations. Being Alpha was not about domination, it was about heart. A child born on a distant human colony would grow up hearing the tales of the battles against the Alphas. They would learn how humanity had faced an empire that had ruled for millennia, how they had fought not because they were strong, but because they refused to bow. They would inherit a legacy of resilience, courage, and the unshakable belief that no one could ever erase humanity from reality. And the galaxy would remember. They would remember a small, underestimated species that dared to rise. They would remember humans who fought with nothing but heart, ingenuity, and willpower, and defeated the greatest power the stars had ever known. Captain Marlowe turned to her crew and smiled, a mix of exhaustion and triumph on her face. "We did not just survive," she said. "We made a mark. The galaxy knows now. Humans cannot be ignored, cannot be defeated, and cannot be broken." And so humanity's story spread among the stars, not as conquerors, not as tyrants, but as the species that had defied the impossible, rewritten the rules of war, and proven that courage could topple empires. The Alphas had been erased from dominance, but humanity had risen from the shadows to claim a legacy far greater than anyone had imagined. The galaxy was no longer the same. Humans had arrived, unyielding and unstoppable, and their name would echo through eternity, a beacon of hope, strength, and the unstoppable spirit of a species that refused to bow. The stars shone brighter that night as if acknowledging the truth. Humans were alpha, not because they ruled, but because they dared to defy the impossible. In the far reaches of the galaxy, where stars burned brighter than suns back home, a mighty civilization ruled without question. They were the Zirans, and in every corner of known space they were feared. Their ships were massive, bristling with weapons that could turn planets into dust. Their soldiers were disciplined, ruthless, and trained to obey without hesitation. To the galaxy, they were alpha. They were untouchable, unstoppable, supreme. Every world under Ziran rule had learned to obey. Cities bent to their will, armies fell before them, and rulers spoke only when spoken to. The Zirans believed themselves the rightful masters of everything. They laughed at those who dared to resist. They crushed rebellions before they even began. Nothing, they thought, could challenge them. But in a quiet corner of a blue planet, humans looked up at the stars, unaware of what waited for them. Humanity was young, scattered, and primitive by galactic standards. Their ships were fragile, their weapons weak. Their civilizations were still learning, still fighting petty wars among themselves. They had no fleets that could rival even a single Ziran destroyer. To anyone else in the galaxy, humans were insignificant, a species that might fade away quietly, forgotten in the dark. The Zirans barely noticed them. A minor species, Supreme Commander Vrax had said, staring at a star map. They are not worth our attention. His officers nodded, confident in their leader's judgment. They had crushed countless civilizations. What could a handful of fragile humans possibly do? But humans had something no Ziran could measure. They had heart. They had courage. They had a stubborn refusal to accept their place in the universe. While the Zirans relied on strength and fear, humans relied on determination and ingenuity. They refused to be pawns. They refused to bow. And for that reason alone, they would one day shake the galaxy. It began with small signs. Scouts returning with strange reports. A human colony that survived attacks that should have wiped it out. Ships that maneuvered in ways no Ziran pilot could anticipate. At first, these reports were dismissed. Errors, Vrax had said. Overactive imaginations. Humans are weak. They cannot fight us. But the errors kept coming, growing bolder, more impossible with each message. In one quiet system, a human captain had faced a dozen Ziran warships and survived. Not by luck, not by technology, but by sheer will. Every officer aboard his ship remembered his words. We are human. We survive. We do not fear. The story spread across human colonies, a quiet spark of hope and defiance. To the Zirans, it was barely a nuisance. To humans, it was a declaration. Even as the Zirans built fleets to patrol the borders of human space, humanity was learning. They were studying, adapting, inventing. Every failed attempt by the Zirans taught them something new. Every attack gave them knowledge. Every loss made them stronger. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, humans began to grow, not in size or strength, but in courage, in unity, in intelligence that the galaxy had never seen before. Supreme Commander Vrax sat on his command throne, staring at the holographic image of the human world. He did not understand it. Nothing made sense. How could such a weak species withstand even the smallest assault? He had crushed empires. He had seen planets fall. Yet here was a species that refused to break, refused to kneel, refused to die. And in that moment, in the silent tension of the command room, a faint sense of unease began to creep into the heart of the greatest alpha civilization in the galaxy. The Zirans had ruled everything. They had conquered everything. They had feared nothing. But the humans were different. They were small, fragile, and dangerous in ways the alphas could not yet understand. Somewhere in the stars, a spark was igniting. A spark of defiance, a spark of courage, a spark that would grow into a flame capable of consuming the mighty Alpha Empire itself. The galaxy would soon learn a truth no one expected. Being Alpha was not enough, and humanity was about to show them why. The first meeting between humans and Zirans was nothing like the Alphas had imagined. A single human colony ship drifted near a small barren moon, far from the crowded stars of the Alpha Empire. It was fragile, almost laughably small compared to the massive warships of the Zirans, yet it carried within it the heartbeat of a species that refused to be ignored. Supreme Commander Vrax hovered above his fleet, watching the tiny ship on the hollow screen. His officers exchanged confident nods. "Destroy it," Vrax commanded. "It is nothing. A minor inconvenience. No challenge to the Alpha Empire." The Zirans unleashed their lasers. Bright, deadly beams tore through space, slicing past the human vessel. The colony ship shuddered, sparks flying across its hull, yet it moved. Not randomly, not chaotically, but with precision, as if it anticipated every strike before it came. Inside the ship, Captain Elena Marlowe gripped the controls, her knuckles white, but her eyes steady. Her crew was small, frightened, and exhausted. They knew the odds were hopeless. Still, she spoke calmly into the comms. "We do not bow. We do not fear. We are humans, and we survive." The Zirans laughed, a deep mocking sound that rolled across the void. "Survive. You will be erased. Prepare to be assimilated." Vrax's voice echoed like thunder. "Your species is insignificant. Resistance is meaningless, but humans did not falter." With a sudden burst, the colony ship darted between the massive Zyran warships. Its movements were faster than anything the Alphas had seen. Lasers missed, energy shields held, and the humans struck back with tiny, precise weapons that tore into the engines of the larger ships. One by one, the Zirans faltered. Their officers screamed in disbelief. "How is this possible?" One muttered. "They are weak, yet they move as if they are everywhere at once." Captain Marlowe did not wait. She knew that speed alone would not win this battle. She coordinated her crew. Each action precise, each strike intentional. Where the Zirans relied on brute force, humans relied on cunning. Where the Alphas expected fear, they found courage. The colony ship was small, yes, but it was clever. It was alive with a determination that no laser could burn. Minutes felt like hours. The Ziran fleet tried to regroup, to focus their firepower, but humans had already adapted. They learned quickly, striking weak points the Alphas did not even notice. With every pass, the humans left trails of disabled ships, sparks drifting across the void like fireworks in defiance. And Vrax was unprepared. Every attack that should have destroyed them failed. Every tactic that had worked on countless other civilizations fell apart. His face turned pale as he watched his fleet crumble in ways he could not understand. "They move like a storm," one general whispered, fear creeping into his voice. "A storm that cannot be stopped." Elena Marlowe's crew cheered quietly, not with arrogance but with relief and determination. They were outnumbered, fragile, and exhausted, but they were still alive. They had survived the Alpha Empire's first strike. In the command room of Vrax's flagship, silence followed. The Ziran officers stared at the holoscreen, disbelief etched on every face. Supreme Commander Vrax slammed his fist on the armrest of his throne. "Impossible," he growled. "No species should survive against us. No species should fight like this. No species should exist against our will." And yet they did. Far across the galaxy, humans were proving a truth no one had expected. Strength was not only measured in size or weapons. Courage, determination, and intelligence could turn even the smallest ship into a weapon capable of shaking an empire. The Zirans had met the humans, and for the first time in their long history they felt doubt. And in that quiet moment, a spark of fear lit in the heart of the Alpha Empire, a spark that would soon grow into a wildfire no one could stop. The humans had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. The humans were small, fragile, and few, but their actions were shaking the foundations of the mighty Alpha Empire. Every fleet the Zirans sent to contain them returned crippled, bewildered, and humiliated. Ships that should have been unstoppable were torn apart by precision strikes. Starbases that were supposed to be impregnable were rendered useless in hours. And everywhere, whispers of the humans spread like wildfire. Supreme Commander Vrax paced in his command chamber, anger burning in his chest. "They are just humans," he barked at his officers. "How can such a weak species cause us this humiliation? They should not exist. They are insignificant." But the evidence was undeniable. On frozen moons, small teams of humans had destroyed entire Ziran ground divisions. Outnumbered 10 to 1, They fought with a ferocity that left even veteran Xiran generals speechless. It was as if each human soldier carried not just weapons but fire in their hearts. Every strike, every maneuver, every decision was precise. Every action screamed, "We will not die." On one distant battlefield, Sergeant Cale Ramirez led a squad of barely 20 humans against a full Xiran regiment. Lasers scorched the ice and snow, and explosions lit up the night. Xiran soldiers laughed at first, confident in their superior numbers. But the humans did not falter. They moved like shadows, striking hard and vanishing before the Alphas could retaliate. One by one, the Xirans fell, unable to comprehend how such small creatures could destroy them. "They fight like predators," muttered an officer to his commander. "But they are so small. How can this be?" Captain Elena Marlowe of the SS Dauntless coordinated with other human fleets across. As the sector, they were no longer running. They were attacking. Supply convoys vanished. Starports were sabotaged. Communication networks went dark. The humans were turning the tables, and the Alpha Empire was unprepared. Vrax's fury grew with each report. "They are learning," he roared. "They are adapting." This cannot happen, but the humans were always one step ahead. Every tactic the Xirans devised, the humans countered with something new. Where the Alphas relied on raw power, humans relied on cunning. Where the Alphas relied on fear, humans relied on courage. And courage, it seemed, could move mountains. On one ship, a young human pilot named Lyra Chen maneuvered her tiny fighter through the wreckage of a Xiran fleet. Her ship was fragile, its engines barely keeping pace, but her mind was sharp. She calculated angles, predicted enemy fire, and struck with deadly accuracy. Each Xiran vessel that fell was another proof that humans could challenge the impossible. Back on the command bridge of Vrax's flagship, the mood had changed. The officers who once laughed at humanity now whispered nervously. "They move faster than our scanners can track," one admitted. "They are not just surviving, they are hunting us." Vrax clenched his fists, his pride wounded more than his ships. "No species has ever defied us like this," he growled. "No one has stood against the Alpha Empire and lived. They are unacceptable." And yet humans continued to defy expectations. Across countless star systems they struck. Each victory was small, tactical, but the message was clear. Humans refused to bow. Humans refused to die. And humans refused to accept the universe's judgment of their weakness. In quiet moments, Captain Marlowe looked at her crew and spoke simply. "We are humans. We may be small, but we are strong where it matters. We have heart, and heart can overcome anything." The galaxy began to take notice. Species that once trembled at the name of the Alphas now watched in awe as humans, the so-called weaklings, tore through fleets, outsmarted generals, and turned fear into courage. The legend of humanity was growing, and the Alpha Empire would never see the end of it coming. The first real spark of hope had begun. And that spark, burning bright in the hearts of humans, would one day become a fire that no empire could ever extinguish. The war was no longer a game of small skirmishes. Humanity had grown bolder, more organized, and more dangerous with every encounter. Across the galaxy, Xiran fleets that had once struck fear into all corners now faced the unthinkable. Humans were not running. Humans were attacking. Supreme Commander Vrax paced the floor of his flagship, his mind racing. Every report brought more destruction, more humiliation. Entire divisions vanished in hours. Star bases that should have held for weeks were gone in a single strike. And now, whispers of a new human weapon had reached him. Something called the Titan-class warships. "They are impossible," Vrax muttered, staring at the holographic images of the enormous vessels. "No species should create such machines. No species should wield such power." Yet the humans had done exactly that. The Titan-class ships were enormous, towering over the largest Xiran dreadnoughts. Each was bristling with weapons, shields, and technology designed not just to fight, but to survive impossible odds. But more than that, they carried the human spirit. Each vessel was a symbol of determination, a moving fortress fueled by ingenuity and heart. Captain Elena Marlowe stood on the bridge of the SS Dauntless, overseeing the assembly of the human fleet. Her crew worked tirelessly, coordinating with engineers, strategists, and pilots across the sector. "We've come too far to stop now," she said softly but with steel in her voice. "We fight not for glory but for survival, and today we show them who we are." The first clash between the human titans and a full Xiran fleet was sudden, brutal, and unforgettable. The Alphas had expected to dominate, to crush humanity once and for all. Instead, they faced an intelligence and ferocity they had never imagined. Human ships moved with uncanny coordination, striking weak points, disabling shields, and dodging attacks with a precision that left Ziran officers in shock. Vrax barked orders, desperate to regain control. "Concentrate fire! Focus all energy on the largest human vessel," he commanded. But the humans anticipated his every move. Their Titans were not just machines, they were extensions of their crews, guided by sharp minds and unbreakable resolve. Explosions lit up the void as one by one Ziran warships were destroyed. Lasers tore through armor, missiles struck with deadly accuracy, and shields absorbed attacks that should have obliterated them. Vrax watched his flagship tremble as his fleet began to retreat. The Alpha Empire, invincible for millennia, had met its first true challenge, and it was crushing. Amid the chaos, Captain Marlowe's voice rang out over the comms. "We fight not because we are the strongest. We fight because we will not bow. We fight because we are human. And we survive." Her words traveled across the fleet, inspiring every crew, every soldier, every pilot. Each strike was precise, each maneuver calculated, each action driven by a single truth: humans refused to lose. Vrax clenched his fists, rage and disbelief battling in his chest. "How can this be?" he whispered, almost to himself. "They should be weak. They should be gone, and yet they destroy us." Across the galaxy, observers from countless species watched in awe. Humans, a species once dismissed as weak and insignificant, were rewriting the rules of war. They were showing the galaxy that true strength was not measured by size or weapons alone. It was measured by courage, creativity, and the refusal to accept defeat. The turning point was clear. The Alphas had underestimated the humans, and the humans had risen to meet every challenge. In the darkness of space, a new power was awakening, one that would soon challenge the very idea of what it meant to be Alpha. For the first time, the galaxy realized that the humans were not merely survivors. They were a force that could not be ignored. And the Alpha Empire, proud and arrogant for millennia, was facing a future it had never imagined. A future where humanity might be unstoppable. The war had changed. And the galaxy would never forget the day humanity revealed its true power. The galaxy was holding its breath. The Alpha Empire, once untouchable, now faced a species it could not understand. Humanity had grown from a small, ignored race into a force capable of challenging the greatest power the stars had ever known. Every corner of Ziran space was on alert, every fleet trembling as reports of human victories reached their commanders. Captain Elena Marlowe stood on the bridge of the SS Dauntless, her eyes scanning the vast fleet of human ships that had gathered for the decisive strike. Titan-class warships moved in formation with smaller vessels, fighters weaving through the gaps like swarms of starlings. Humans were not just surviving, they were preparing to finish the fight. Her crew worked tirelessly, their faces showing exhaustion but also determination. Every human aboard knew the risk. The Alpha Empire had ruled countless civilizations. They were cunning, ruthless, and experienced in war. But the humans had something the Alphas could never measure: heart. And heart in this battle would make all the difference. The first wave of Ziran ships appeared on the sensors, massive and glowing with energy weapons primed to destroy anything in their path. Vrax himself led the fleet, confident in his superiority. He had underestimated humanity before, but he would not make that mistake again. Or so he thought. Elena took a deep breath and activated the comms. "We fight not for conquest. We fight not for power. We fight for survival, for freedom, and for every soul that has dared to believe in humanity. Stand firm, act smart, and remember, our strength is our heart. We do not give up." Her words echoed across the fleet, a spark igniting courage in every crew. The battle began with a sudden clash of titanic forces. Lasers tore through the darkness. Explosions lit up space like fireflies in a storm, and debris drifted across the void like silent witnesses to history. Ziran warships fired relentlessly, confident that their superior numbers and weapons would crush the humans. But the humans were prepared. Titan-class vessels moved like living giants, absorbing punishment and striking with precision. Smaller human ships darted through gaps in the Ziran formations, sabotaging engines and disabling weapon systems. Every move was coordinated, every strike calculated. Humanity fought like it had never fought before, not for glory or fame, but for survival. Vrax's anger boiled over. Concentrate all fire on the lead ship. Destroy it, he commanded. But the humans anticipated him. The lead Titan absorbed the attack, and at the exact moment, a fleet of smaller human vessels struck the flank of the Alpha forces, tearing through their defenses. Vrax's flagship shook as explosions rocked its hull. Fear, a sensation he had never known, crept into his heart. In the midst of chaos, Captain Marlowe's voice carried across the comms again. Remember who we are? Remember that we survive when nothing else can. Today we make the impossible possible. And the humans did. One by one, Xeran warships fell. Fleets that had once seemed unbeatable were reduced to burning wreckage. Every maneuver, every strike, every decision of the humans showed intelligence, courage, and unbreakable resolve.